Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Fran and today I'd like to talk about the 3D, our three-dimensional physical reality, and explore the illusion that we are all immersed in, and how our beliefs and our education and experiences shape our understanding of the world we live in. Hopefully you see how what we think of as real is just something that you have believed for a long time, or a conviction that has been practiced over and over again. What we call real is merely an interpretation of things based on our limited and partial human experience and perspective. In truth, we are so deep in the rabbit hole that we think that there is no world above us. Let's take time, for example. Surely there's nothing more real and tangible than time, right? After all, we can measure it with incredible precision. It affects everyone. We can all agree on a time for a meeting or an appointment. And if we're late for something, the consequences are real. We all grow old. And if we make mistakes, there is no going back to a day, a month, or a year earlier to change the course of our life. So we can all agree that time is real, objective and independent of our experience in this world. We cannot stop time. We cannot travel through time. We cannot unsee or unhear something that we have seen or heard. Our past is fixed and set in stone. Okay, so now let's look at time from a different perspective. In my everyday job, I am an airline crew. I remember when Concorde started flying, the advert said, "Concorde, land before you leave," or something to that effect. Now, of course, the advert was a pun, playing with the fact that Concorde was flying from Paris and London to New York, and the flight time was shorter than the time change between the two cities. So you could take off at, say, 4 p.m. London time and land at 8:30 London time in New York, which would make it 3:30 p.m. local. Of course, you weren't really flying backwards in time. You were just flying to a different time zone. You were flying across space at great speed. Although many found the advert witty, I found it deeply troubling and fascinating at the same time. It got me thinking about how deeply intertwined space and time really are, how you cannot think about time independently of space. The two things are one, you cannot separate them. I'll give you some examples. If you arrange a meeting, you arrange it in a specific point in space at a specific time, or better yet, at a specific local time. If I fly backwards to a time zone which is behind my local time by 4 hours, I'm not getting any younger though, or am I? Now, if there is one thing that is clear to any airline crew or to anyone who consistently travels through time zones, is that time is simply convention, something that we've invented to organize, understand, and make sense of our experience here on Earth. It's not something fundamentally real at the deeper level. Time is linked to our movement through space in relation to light. We are measuring days on the basis of when the sun rises and sets, from our own position on Earth. At the speeds that we can reach here on Earth, in this physical reality that we experience through our five senses, it's not immediately obvious that time does not tick for everyone, for every observer at the same speed. Yet, it doesn't. Let's look at what Einstein found by thinking about time, movement through space, and speed and light. He found that, and this was later proved by quantum physics, that the faster you move, the slower time ticks for you. So time is relative to the movement of the observer. You can't look at or understand time without reference to who and what is experiencing it. So it cannot be absolute. Now, photons are particles of light, and as we know from the theory of relativity, light travels at a fixed speed of 300,000 kilometers per second, more or less. On Earth, we don't know of anything which can travel faster than light. But what we do know for sure is that at the speed of light, time is frozen. So effectively, if you could travel faster than light across space because of some amazing modification to the old Concorde, you'd be traveling backwards or forwards in time. Now, to a photon, time doesn't exist. As we said, at the speed of light, time is frozen. So what we do know is that time is real to us on this earthly existence and experience because of our limited and partial point of view, because of our five senses, and because of the speed at which we move through space. Now, let's say an astronaut flies in space at incredible speed in a space shuttle for years. Upon returning to Earth, he or she will find that his or her twin has aged more in the intervening time. For the twin on Earth, time moved much faster. And what is 30 years maybe for the person on Earth could be 4 years to the astronaut who traveled at incredible speeds. Now that obviously the difference depends on the speed at which he traveled and for how long. Now, this was the famous twin paradox thought experiment devised by Einstein before technology could actually prove him right. The point I'm trying to make, we don't all age at the same rate. Time is not the same for everyone. Time is not absolute. It's just an illusion that we've convinced ourselves it's real. Of course, from our limited physical perspective, where we move slowly and time ticks incredibly fast, the difference in time experienced by different observers are so tiny that you will never be able to notice them. You can notice this difference using high-precision atomic clocks, but you wouldn't be able to perceive it through your five senses. This is why we should never rely on our senses to establish whether something is real or not. Our senses deceive us all the time. Optical and auditory illusions are proof of this. Brain damage can cause a complete shift in reality perception. Memory is reconstructed every day on the basis of our experiences. To make a long story short, our senses are not a reliable source of evidence when trying to establish whether something is real in absolute terms. We can talk of the truth only relative to our personal experience. Nothing can exist in absolute terms outside of our human experience. You can't remove the observer from reality and then talk about reality. The observer is inside the reality that he or she is trying to observe. The observer is always looking at himself or herself, looking at reality. The moment you remove the observer, there is no reality to be observed. As if reality is actually inside the mind of the observer. And it is. I know this will probably challenge your logical mind, but these are not merely philosophical musings. These are facts proven by quantum physics. The way you look at reality changes the reality you look at. If you set up a quantum experiment to search for a particle, you will find a particle. If you look for a wave, the physical world will reflect back to you a wave. So what we've established so far is that time is relative to our motion through space, and the space and time are deeply intertwined. Following this reasoning, Lorentz found that space is also relative to the observer and his speed of motion. It contracts and it stretches out for different observers moving at different speeds. So pretty much anything you consider to be absolute on this earth is relative to the observer. There is no objective reality as such. Because the differences in time and space in our three-dimensional reality are infinitesimally small, we can afford to ignore them. Yet, they exist at the fundamental level. Einstein was deeply disturbed by his own discovery because it undermined his deeply held belief that science is an objective discipline which studies real phenomena and which is independent of the observer or of the scientist's perspective. Now, if reality is an objective and the observer is inside the reality he or she is looking at and can't be separated from it, then science cannot be an objective discipline. There is no truth, only different points of view, different perspectives for different observers. Although this may seem deeply troubling to you, it can actually be fascinating, exciting, and empowering to know that we create the reality that we look at by the way we choose to look at it. Of course, this means that we are responsible for our own fate, and then we can no longer point the finger of blame to external circumstances or misfortune. We can no longer be victims of outer forces, chance, or destiny. But think about the freedom and power this affords us. We can choose to look at life differently any moment. We can choose the reality that we want to experience any day. Now, quantum physics cannot tell us any clearly than what you look for, you will find. So stop looking for reasons to justify your failures. You will find plenty of evidence. Stop expecting life to disappoint you by proving you right. Stop expecting life to be predictable and for events that happened in the past to reoccur in the future. Your past does not define your future. At the fundamental level, at the subatomic level, past and future don't even exist. They're a figment of the imagination, like memory. So stop being a slave to your senses, to the illusion that is your physical reality, and start creating something new. Remember, nothing is real in this 3D world but your observation, your imagination. So start observing that which you want to be real. And if you are still seeing the old reality, it is still you subconsciously projecting the old reality, the old illusion out there on the screen of space. So persist in your new vision of reality until the 3D mirrors us back to you through sensory evidence. So this is it for today. If you're still listening, I'm glad you came with me down the rabbit hole. In any case, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful awakened day.